You're gonna be hearing some page turning this time around.
Oh yeah? Did you do some note-taking, some researching?
No, I didn't. I didn't have enough time because I didn't have enough time. But
it was too hard to find information on Stephen King.
I just didn't have the time. I read the story and then I had to play a game, so...
Sorry, I had to play a game. That's going to be my go-to excuse for work. Why didn't you get this revision in? Sorry, I had to play a game. My Thursday game hasn't been happening for like a while, so I'm not used to it happening, and I forgot that like schedule things mattered. Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. It's a good start if you're repositioning yourself as the new Jigsaw also. I had to play a game.
And now you have to play one too.
And now you have to play my game. I am going to set you up in a series of increasingly elaborate traps because you're not a nice person or something. Those movies go increasingly off the rails, but thank God for the lore. Speaking of lore, have you seen Five Nights at Freddy's yet?
I did. I watched it, when was it? I think it was Monday.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was so awesome.
I watched Five Nights at Freddy's. I saw Five Nights at Freddy's. I did watch it. I did not think it was awesome, but I was not angered by it like everyone else seems to be.
I thought it was awesome. And everyone I watched it with thought it was awesome too. It's terrible, but it's awesome.
I wouldn't even go so far. It doesn't know what it needs to be. My issue is that Five Nights at Freddy's, every story element of Five Nights at Freddy's in the games happens not in the games. Mm-hmm. And if you want to show that on screen, then people are going to be like, where's the animatronics? Because they're not really a part of the lore until it gets increasingly like closer to the time the game happens. There's so much background, and it's only really interesting if you're slowly discovering it. Mm-hmm. But if you throw it all up on screen, then you're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why is the restaurant even open 20 years later?
It's also like, the lore is very adult.
Yeah, but even like, and they have to pull a lot of punches. I get why they had to pull punches. The only people who are like clamoring for this are like people who can't go see rated R movies.
Not true at all.
I know a lot of people who like took their kids to see it because their kids are like big Five Nights at Freddy's fans. If there is a Five Nights at Freddy's section in Target's kids section, then yeah, you're gonna make a PG-13 horror movie. But
I really liked. I don't want to spoil anything. We haven't seen it yet. Never mind.
Don't spoil anything. Obviously, people listening to this episode of It's Del Toro Time with Phil
and Willow
have not seen Five Nights at Freddy's yet. Those are our listeners. They're people who are waiting just the right moment.
Hey, we can tag this with Five Nights at Freddy's now, so it'll reach a wider audience.
It'll reach a wider audience. No, you know what though? Josh Hutcherson, he didn't have to go that hard, but he went that hard. He didn't have to
go that hard. He went really hard.
He went really hard. I was just like, dang, dude, I didn't. That acting degree is really shining through. He's pulling out all the emotional stops.
The
little girl was great. I really enjoyed watching her.
She was awesome, yeah.
I didn't understand why the cop didn't ever have to be a police officer. Like why she was allowed to just hang out at a broken down restaurant all night.
Do you know the Vanessa lore?
But they don't clear any of it up in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't want to go into it because spoilers, but like, it just seems like a cop who's not on the job the whole time.
They casted her so well appearance-wise, though. I was like,
You know, I enjoyed it. If you have a chance, if you can see it for cheap or for free, why not? Like, it's a good time. It's not violent. at all, except for like
there's
there's a couple of discretion shots.
There's some really funny violence.
Yeah, it's you know what? It's as violent as the games, which are just jump scares. So that's about as violent. Speaking of violent, The Dark Descent.
The Dark Descent.
Yeah, David G. Hartwell's The Dark Descent. That's where we are. We're covering the stories in The Fabulous Formless Darkness. Stories that are about weird things that we're not really sure if they're real or not, what dimension they come from. And I'd say this story sits smack dab in the middle of all of that because...
I don't know. I'm fairly certain that the stuff in here is real.
This stuff in here is real. No, it's not psychological horror. That's not this section. These are real goblins. We just don't really understand what they're for, why they're here, what they want. What's the story this week?
Crouch End by Stephen King.
I got new glasses. I got new glasses.
Glasses Squad.
The Glasses Squad. Hashtag glasses. Hashtag squad. Hashtag changing up our looks. I've gotten a lot of compliments on my glasses, by the way.
I told you, they're good.
They're colorful glasses. So this is a story that got me back into horror. I was always a Stephen King reader, but I read this story when Nightmares and Dreamscapes was first published, and I was just like, I need more of whatever this is in my life, like right now. This sort of like unexplained bizarreness. I had never read Lovecraft. They drop his name quite a bit in this story. And I was like, I gotta figure out more of what this is all about. So Crouch End.
So it also got you into weird fiction then.
It got me into everything. Like, I never stopped being a Stephen King fan. Like, that was going on nonstop. But he was really the only horror writer I read. And then I read this, and I was like, well, here we go. Here we go uppity up. Here we go downity down. With whatever this is.
I think I was already into horror when I started reading Stephen King.
Yeah.
But the first Stephen King story I ever read, I believe, was Cujo.
Oh, I think you were right. I remember you having a copy of that novel.
Yeah, I read it in 6th grade.
Yeah.
Because my English class had, like, every week we would have, like, an hour of, like, reading time.
Yeah,
and I went to my middle school library, went to the section, like, the horror section, and I was like, they got Stephen King here. Quality. And then I read Eye of the Dragon or whatever, which is not a horror story, but is very good.
So it was March 6th, 2013. and my Facebook status for that day was Willow gets to free read during English class. The kids can choose any book in the school library and read it for 15 minutes a day. They keep their books on a shelf at the front of the room. In the stacks are Marvel classics, Sisters Grimm, some teen sci-fi, coming-of-age novels, and then Willow's book, Cujo. That was 10 and a half years ago. So we know we can date it. We can date it almost to the day. That's
why I got so good at reading so fast, because I was like, 15 minutes, that's not enough time.
Gotta push it all in. Yeah. And I think I've said before that my first exposure to Stephen King was my friend Carrie Lasher doing a dramatic reading of Survivor Type in 7th grade. And then I was like, I need more of this in my life. And I went home and I think I convinced my mom to drive me to the bookstore so I could buy either Night Shift or Skeleton Crew, whichever book that short story is in. So I started out with his short stories and quickly moved on to his novels. But Crouch End is a special one. It was first published in 1980 in the book New Tales of the Cthulhu Mythos, which I own, which was edited by Ramsey Campbell for Arkham House Press, sort of their first mainstream attempt to expand the Cthulhu mythos. It's the opening salvo of the book, which is a very big deal for them because King was kind of at the height of his first wave of popularity in 1980. And what's interesting, though, because I'm a nerd and because I had to do it, I was like, is the version of Crouch End the same as the version in Nightmares and Dreamscapes? Well, you can't find it out if you buy a copy of New Tales because they've since incorporated the Nightmares and Dreamscapes version of the story into subsequent editions. No, you have to go online and find the first pressing of this book, a copy of it. I did not buy it. I just found a digital copy.
I imagine it's very expensive.
Yeah. And yes, King did rework portions of the story. Not substantially, but he fixed like some clunky phrasing from the original version, but he added like a bunch of like weird sexism into it that wasn't present in the original version. So I don't know if you recall, there's a part near the beginning where one of the cops is like thinking in their brain about the woman they're interviewing. Mm-hmm. And they comment on her breasts.
Yeah.
And just like pretty woman, pretty nice breasts or whatever. Pert. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's kind of weird. And it doesn't have anything to do, like, it's the cop character isn't even like that. Well, in the original version, it says like pretty woman, professionally dressed, like just sort of taking a stock of who she is.
Yeah.
And he added like, there's a part in the Nightmares and Dreamscapes version where they're like, so the girl, sorry, young woman, you have to call them young women now. That's the politically correct way of saying it. In the original version, it goes, so the girl, young woman, was yada, 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 yada. And I was like, that to me dates the story more than anything, is him adding a weird comment about political correctness, which was like very much a 90s thing.
Which version
like,
do we have?
We have the Nightmares and Dreamscapes version.
Because the part where the girl, young woman is just the girl, young woman for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe, because the version I have is definitely the Nightmares and Dreamscapes version. So maybe you have an edition of The Dark Descent that has the original,
because I don't
original version.
The boob talk either.
Wow. So you have what I consider the original the better version only because it doesn't have the weird sexism that he interpolated into it for later publishings. But I do have a copy of New Tales of the Cthulhu Mythos that has the Nightmares and Dreamscapes version. So, ladies and gentlemen, there are two versions floating around out there. They are the same exact story.
Yeah.
The only thing that has changed is wording here and there. And then he adds a couple of those weird character beats. But it's, with minor exceptions, it's exactly the same thing. So no matter which version you've read, you're reading.
It's truly not a Stephen King story if one of the main characters isn't horribly sexist.
Yeah. So what's funny is the 1980 version is less sexist than the later version. But this isn't like a Stand thing or a Dark Tower thing. It's not like reworked whole cloth. It's the same story. Yeah. But which also shows that King never stops tinkering with his works. He likes to go back and play around with them. Yeah. So yeah, 1980s. King is at the height of his first wave of publishing dominance, and he writes this story for New Tales of the Cthulhu Mythos. So which is like I said, it's the opening salvo of the book, and to me, that explains more why there are actual references to Lovecraft in this, because it's for readers of this collection to kind of get you in the mood.
Yeah.
And also, this story is weirdly structured. It starts off in the present, jumps back a few minutes, and then jumps back again. Like there's...
Yep.
It starts off at a police station. They're talking about this woman who just came in. Then it flashes back to when she just came in. Then it tells her story that she told the cops. And then it comes back to the present.
It does mention Jesus Christ Superstar.
Okay, you do have that version because the new version changes it to Phantom of the Opera. Changes it to Phantom because Phantom, instead of Jesus Christ Superstar, like now in an ongoing run, it changes it to Phantom of the Opera in its like seemingly endless run. because Phantom's just been on stage now for years. Okay, you got JC Superstar. We know where we are. The late 70s, 1980, Superstar was still running in London at the time. But Superstar aside, weird sex symbolism aside, what is Crouch End about?
It's about a woman.
Poor woman.
Kind of. It's about a lot of things, you know?
Did you actually read this story?
I did, yes. It's about...
Because you sound like you're waffling.
No.
It's about a lot of things.
It is about a lot of things, because like the main character, it seems to be a cop at the beginning, but it's actually a story about a woman. But it starts off with two cops sitting, talking about this woman who just came in to report her husband missing, and how weird her story is. One of the cops, Farnham, has like just been assigned to Crouch End, and he's like, that was a bunch of hogwash. And the other cop, Vetter, is like, it certainly isn't. They have all of these like files, these like, they call them back files.
Yeah.
Of like cases from Crouch End that nobody can solve. But Vetter is basically like, look, dude, there's some things going on here that just can't be explained. There's this guy Lovecraft, he talks about dimensions a lot. You know, Crouch End, it's like a leather bag. In some places the leather's really thin. Crouch End is there, dimensions poke through. I really like the metaphor. I think it's funny.
Labored. It's a bit labored because he's like, you know how like there's a leather bag that could be inflated with air, and if the leather bag rubs too much, I'm like, why not a shoe or something?
Yeah.
Like something I'm familiar with as opposed to an inflated leather bag.
Yep. But anyways, this woman comes in and she's like talking about like her husband is dead, but they have to find him. Her and her husband were trying to find her husband's associate's house because he's a lawyer. And then starts like they get in a cab, they go there, the cab vanishes. Stuff, it goes bad. There's some kids, there's a cat with a scar face. Her husband starts freaking out. Her
husband, before he starts freaking out, they hear moaning from because they're in the suburbs. Crouch End is an actual place.
The English suburbs.
Yeah, it's the British. They're Americans. They're in London for the first time.
This doesn't take place in Maine.
It does not take place in Maine. But Crouch End's a real place. You can go visit it. It's like, you know, suburban London. And so they're kind of, it's a residential area. Yeah. There's a small downtown, but they're surrounded by nice houses, and they hear moaning from the yard, or garden, as they say in England. Through some hedges. The husband goes to investigate. There's like a weird black spot on the ground. She can't get through the hedges. He gets attacked by something.
Yeah.
Thrown bodily out of the hedges. And from that point on, he's like a crying child. He is babbling incoherently.
It's H.P. Lovecraft style, baby.
Yeah.
But like, long story short, nothing goes well.
Nope.
There's something. There's bad.
Cat-faced people. There's motorcyclists with rat faces. There's a hobo under a bridge who might be the cat. But how and what happens to the husband ultimately?
He get dead.
Well, I know that. Tentacles.
Tentacles. He gets consumed by a creature. Yes. Who has apparently consumed a lot of people, and all their faces are like, it's bad.
Yeah. It comes up from under the ground.
Ha ha. I don't remember anything that happens after this, but I'm not dead, so.
Yeah, she goes running through a warehouse district that has signage that's all just references to Lovecraft stories, which is weird. There's an underground horror, like 60 Lost in underground horror, like headline that keeps haunting her. Yeah, there's two children, one with a claw hand, who are very rude, but who end up being like cultists of some sort that kind of call on this being that might be Shub-Niggurath, who is
the Whistler from the stars.
Yes. They're just in like a Lovecraft theme park. And
Yeah. That would be awesome.
Would it? It'd be really racist.
It would be
I don't
really
want to know
racist.
that cat's name.
Not just the weird fiction theme park. How about that instead?
Yes. Yeah. A Cthulhu Mythos theme park.
Yeah.
Because Cthulhu is mentioned in passing, but it's mostly a Shub-Niggurath thing. The entity, the goat with 1,000 young, and
blind
he
Piper
gets
who is not named for 1,000 years.
Yes, and he gets pulled down underground. She makes it back to regular London, but and also she keeps seeing signs for a place called a Towen.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called? The something Towen?
That's Cthulhu stuff.
Not Crouch End Towen. That's a different place. You know what? I should have had this pulled up. Ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought I had this entire story committed to memory. I guess.
Towen.
Also,
It's what about Slaughter Towen?
Slaughter Towen, yes, which is, unsettling anyway. Towen being a druidic word meaning like place of sacrifice. Although when I tried to actually look this up in the original Oxford English Dictionary, it was like, that's just made up. So
yeah.
All the references I can find to Towen are actually just references back to this story. So I think King just made that up. But when people find out that she was in Crouch End, they want nothing to do with her.
Yeah. And I'm like, understandable, but also
rude.
Why is everyone so rude?
She's clearly been attacked. She makes her way to the police station. She tells the story. Vetter, the old cop, goes out for some fresh air. The young cop goes out to find him. Can't find him. Heads off to look for him. Never comes back.
Which is a shame.
Which is a shame. The cops actually seem relatively nice, except for the one cop who's like, breaks the fingers of pickpockets for fun, does. Hey, pretty. Hey, me love.
Yeah, that guy's not great.
Yeah, he's bad news. He ends up okay, though, I think, because the other two cops, one cop ends up disappearing. The other one dies of a heart attack 6 months later. She has kids. There's kids waiting for her at their hotel. She ends up going into like an insane asylum for a while.
She was like, you know what? She attempts suicide. Then she spends a year at a rest home.
Rest home, yes. Like any Lovecraftian protagonist, she ends up in a rest home for a while.
Farnham also had kids.
Yes, yeah.
Twin
and people
girls.
Just think he did escarpers on his wife and kids. They think he just ran off because men have a tendency to just disappear in this area.
Yeah.
And that's a rough outline of the story. And Crouch End just keeps on keeping on.
Yeah, I mean, Doris does eventually come back.
But
not to Crouch End, but to her
family. Yeah. But you can see like from a brief description of the story, it doesn't sound that weird or that like anything much.
It's spooky.
But it is spooky. Like it's a creepy story. The thing behind the hedges, the cat with the weirdly scarred face, the two little kids. Like it's just a bunch of weird things that keep happening in this town. And if you want the closest approximation of this story, the best example I can give is In the Mouth of Madness, the movie In the Mouth of Madness. Has so many things in it that I'm like pretty sure were influenced by not Lovecraft, but this story, Crouch End.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of elements in the movie In the Mouth of Madness that to me come directly from this. Which is why In the Mouth of Madness is one of my favorite horror movies because it just scratches this itch so well. But it's funny because in 2006, this story was adapted into a television episode of Stephen King's Nightmares and Dreamscapes.
Okay.
And I actually have it pulled up here. Let me find it for you because I want you to just see what we're dealing with when it comes to Stephen King's Nightmares and Dreamscapes. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So this is in the short story, Stephen, the character, gets pulled down underground by a tentacle monster. And that does happen in the movie, but there's a whole thing with a bridge. Now they kind of try to ramp up the drama in the TV version of this by making a lot of weird stuff happen at the bridge. But I want you to see, this is the level of fright. This is the scariest this episode gets. All right, you ready?
Yep.
I'm going to show it to you. Oh, wait for it. It gets better. Wait till they see the cat. Goodbye. It doesn't get scarier than this. This is as terrifying as the whole show gets. You have poor Claire Forlani acting her heart out. And then the guy acting his heart out as well. He's trying his dangdest. But he's just not pulling it off. Now, I want you to imagine this poor actor trying to do this with none of these special effects going on.
That kid looked way too much like Mitzi.
Okay, and now I'm going to skip to the part where he gets pulled underground by the tentacle monster because
wow, that scene goes on for a while.
It goes on for a long time. This whole episode is short, but it goes on for a long time. Hold on.
You kept your promise. Now we'll stay together forever.
Maybe oh, here we go. Okay, here comes the tentacle monster. This is 2006 or 7, maybe 7. I saw better television special effects in like 1995.
This is like fire. What is it called?
Yeah, poor Claire Forlani acting her heart out. So you can see what. The best part, though, is that JPEG, I guess, of a cat.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Just was
it a like, JPEG of a fake cat?
It was the worst thing. I literally cracked. I burst out laughing when I was watching it. I was watching it in my car while Mitzi was in her circus class. And I just couldn't stop. I had to pause it and go back. And then I was like, well, if Willow hasn't seen this, I got to show it to her because this is the best thing I've ever seen. It's the best thing I've ever seen. Oh, Crouch End. Available to view on YouTube. Just look up Stephen King's Nightmares and Dreamscapes Crouch End. The whole thing's up there, recorded off of TNT. But Claire Forlani actually does act her heart out, playing yet another American, even though she's British. And the TV version actually ties it in. It spends like 15 minutes of just them in their hotel before they even go to Crouch End.
So it gets rid of the cops and stuff?
The cops are there. One cop is there in the beginning. He brings her a cup of coffee. Then the whole episode is a flashback. And then it cuts back to the police station at the very end. Mm-hmm. And the cop, I think the cop turns into the cat. That's what it is. She looks up and the cop has turned into the cat with the scarred face. And she's like, oh no. And that's the end of the episode. Terrible, terrible time. Totally worth a watch. But again, a great example of why this kind of horror is very difficult to translate to the like visual medium, because if it doesn't, it's that Stephen King thing too, where it's like you can make it creepy on the page, but it's not that creepy to see because he's good at being like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but trust me, if you were there, this would freak you the heck out.
It's also like Lovecraftian stuff is so hard to get good on screen because the whole point is that seeing it makes you go mad, or that what you're seeing is impossible.
Right.
And that's just, you can't do that.
Right. And it's that thing where like, I think In the Mouth of Madness does it well, where it's just like this, the notion of you're trapped in a place that makes no sense, but it's following its own logic is scary.
Yeah.
It's not scary to see, so you have to sell it as not only scary, but like bizarre and weird. And you have to have the main characters just being like, this is nuts, right? Like, this is, am I seeing, like, unfortunately, Claire Forlani, who's doing a great job, but she's just like terrified the whole time. And I'm like, but she's being terrified at bad CGI, which just doesn't sell it. Like the snake monsters.
Like, what is happening?
Right. Also, the TV episode has to be filmed, I guess, probably for CGI reasons. The whole thing is in broad daylight, whereas the short story is night. Like, it's twilight the whole time.
So you can't really see what's happening.
Right, you have these long shadows, everything's creepy, the time is distorted because, like, you're never really sure what time it is. The thing behind the shrubs is, like, terrifying because you're not sure what it is, but, like, in the episode, it's just, you hear, like, help me, help. And then it's, like, a lot of, like, weird camera. Well, you saw what they did with the camera. Yes. It's a lot of, like, zooming in and out and, like, weird effects. They do that a lot.
Tunnel.
The TV episode does do a thing, though, where because they cut the cops, all the stuff about dimensions and Lovecraft is given to the cab driver, who they get to take them to Crouch End. So it's more like this old guy who warns them against Crouch End. He warns them about Lovecraft's like dimensions. He's like, this is a bad place. Like, it could be, it's just a thin area. So they kind of beef up his role a lot, which makes, like, it works dramatically. It works.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, horrifically, it does not. So, Crouch End. So when you read this story, what were your thoughts on it?
I liked it a lot. I mean, I like Stephen King, and I like Lovecraftian horror. Yeah, I thought it was a little spooky. I thought the kids were funny. At the beginning, especially, when they're just shouting at the adults, and the adults are like, eh.
Yeah, they just swear at them.
Yeah. The adults seem so scared of these children. And I'm like, that makes sense in context, but, like, right off the bat, they're young kids. One of them's 5 years old. I'm not going to be scared of a 5-year-old swearing at me. I'm just going to kick it.
Well, one of them has a claw hand.
Just going to kick it.
A kid with a limb difference. Got to run away from that. In the TV episode, I will say that the kid with the claw hand, it's not like King makes it sound like the kid just has some like genetic abnormality. In the episode, they actually give him, it's a monster claw. It's like, it's not a human hand. So that makes it a little, the episode actually makes it work a little bit better just because we're not just like being afraid of a child because he has a limb difference. We're freaked out because this kid's got like a monster hand. I feel like
that works less for me. Just because, like, oh, there's a kid with a monster hand, like, right at the start.
Well, okay. I guess I'm not describing it well enough. It's not like a goblin hand. It's weird enough that it's one of the few things that actually works for me in the episode. Okay. Like, it's just weird. Like, the cat face, the cat with the scarred face is just a cat with a CGI, like, Harvey Dent face. It's terrible. It's like this sort of floating element, like, of a bad eye. Whereas they could have just cut the whole thing and it wouldn't have made any difference because it's not scary anyway. But I said up top, I really am a big fan of this story. I think it's good, like, introduction to kind of weird cosmic horror.
I just have a question real quick.
What's your question real quick?
So 60 Lost in Underground Horror, is that referencing something?
No, I think it's just a weird thing. Like, they think it's referring to the London Underground, and it actually really is something underground that is horrific.
Yeah, I mean, but she just keeps, like, it just keeps coming up.
It does just keep coming up, and I think it's because it's supposed to, I mean, I don't know, but, like, my interpretation is that in the end, you're supposed to be like, oh, dip, it's an actual underground
60
horror.
Lost in an underground horror.
Yeah.
So it's eaten 60 people.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's weirded out the whole time because she's like, shouldn't it, if it's a London Underground crash or something, shouldn't it be like 60 killed in underground horror? Mm-hmm. And he's like, nope, 60 lost in underground horror.
Do you think that after they get consumed by the creature, it's like that episode of, like, or that, like, season of Channel Zero, I don't know if you remember this, where they, like, are just in the suburb world? Just, like, living there.
Oh, is that season 2?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I don't know. But do you agree with me that... Oh, never mind. I got my wires crossed. I was going to say, do you agree with me that Five Nights at Freddy's felt a lot like a Channel Zero season?
Yeah, I do.
It's very similar to the Candle Cove.
It is.
Season of Channel Zero, just because it's like a guy having nightmares.
Yeah.
Something bad happened to him in his past. And he's trying to reconcile. Yeah. Now this episode of Nightmares and Dreamscapes was directed by Mark Haber, who went on to direct 14 episodes of Rizzoli and Isles. So I don't know. Do with that what you will. There's nothing else in this guy's directing history that means anything to me, but I just thought it was funny that he was like, horror's not for me, I'm just gonna do Rizzoli and Isles from now on.
Yeah.
Written by
smile full of evil innocence. There's some baller lines in this story.
Yeah, it's great. And written by a guy who wrote 10 episodes of Silk Stalkings. This was the last thing he wrote for television.
I wonder why.
This was this is just a good story. Like I don't have anything else to say about it. It is what it is. It's a good story. Stephen King, Crouch End. Pick up a copy of pick up a copy of the copy of this book that Willow has. I don't know which edition it is, but it's the single volume hefty copy with everything in it. Paperback that
it was copyrighted in 1987.
I think that's just when it was published.
Yeah.
Hold it up to the camera. You have that edition of The Dark Descent. So if you're watching this on YouTube,
copy of it at Half Price Books right now.
You can buy a copy of it at the Irreverent Bookworm in Minneapolis. It's on my recommendation. It's on my recommendation shelf if anyone wants to buy a copy.
I'm just saying that this specific edition is at Half Price Books right now. I saw a copy of it.
So yeah, that's Crouching. It's one of the editions. Who cares? The audience doesn't care which edition of the book you're holding. What they do care about Willow, what they do care about is what the next story in The Dark Descent is.
Joyce Carol Oates' Nightside.
Oates McGoats. Have we read on Joyce Carol Oates
yes,
before?
We have.
We did.
We've read two, I believe. Well, we read the one that I recommended we read.
That's right.
And then we read Table of Contents.
Oats, McGoats, goats. What's the oats, salad notes, oats.
Maybe we only read that one?
I'm gonna keep singing. I think we only read that one. About Joyce Carol Oates. We've only done one Joyce Carol Oates, and it was the one you recommended, but now we're doing one for real, for legit. Yeah. I mean, the other one was legit.
The other one was good.
What's the for real, for legit Joyce Carol Oates?
I already said what it was. It's Nightside.
Yeah, but I was singing over you. Nightside by Joyce Carol Oates. Oates McGoats. She's written about 800 stories. Wow, about 17,000 novels.
The names are all redacted in this story.
I can't wait. I have not read this. I know nothing about this. It's chose. It's Joyce Carol Oates.
It is.
Yes. So until then, until I get my tongue back under control and am able to discuss horror intelligently once more, I'm Phil.
And I'm Willow.
And we'll see you all when
it's
Del Toro
time. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Jost, goats, dotes, ghost, bedotes.